It's time. It's here. Time for Spelljammer. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and we're going to review the Spelljammer bundle. Just a heads up, it is like 11 o'clock at night before this video comes out because I'm just, we moved, if you can't tell from the change of background. So that's been busy, and I got a chance to read through these books, and now I'm going to give you my thoughts on them. But first and foremost, I wanted to touch on the aesthetics of the two bundles, because you have the standard bundle and the collector's bundle. And I wanted to take a bit of time to talk about that. Normally, I don't get into that simply because you can tell when you're looking at, like, when it's an individual book, you can tell what the covers look like. That's really the only difference. But since these are a bundle, it's a little bit harder to tell. So I do want to take a bit of time here at the top before I get into the contents of the book, just so you can make an informed decision about which bundle you would like. So first off is the standard bundle, which is right here. And these are the covers that you would have seen advertised. So you have WotC's Astral Menagerie, Light of Xaryxis, and Astral Adventurers Guide. Solid covers, really like them. And then you have a DM screen that you get. And I really like this DM screen. I think I might like this better than the collectors. I'll show you both so you can make a decision, but so very nice color scheme. The inside, if you're not running a Spelljammer campaign, then unfortunately the interior of these DM screens are going to be pretty useless to you. They have like the astral plane, air and gravity, astral encounters. So this is a Spelljammer DM screen. So I know it's silly to say if you're getting this bundle but you're not planning on running Spelljammer, but honestly, this stuff is all great in the contents of this book. For somebody that runs in Eberron primarily, there's so much for me to use, and I'm really excited. So unfortunately, the DM screen isn't really useful for me because, like, the astral plane in Eberron is different. The astral encounters could be fun, but you have those tables in the book, and I'm not a big fan of encounter tables on DM screen. I would rather have, like, the rules and conditions and actions and bonus actions, things like that I'm going to need just at the tip of my fingers because they're going to come up a lot. So that's the only ding I would really have against the DM screen. Let me show you the collector's edition DM screen because I do really like this. Unfold it because it's kind of terrifying. So you got a big old spooky dude right there reaching out. But yeah, I really like both of these. I like the art on both of them. Not a big fan of the inside. Now, when it comes to the collector's edition, after the Journeys through the Radiant Citadel Collector's Edition, which was stunning and gorgeous and might be my favorite collector's cover, these kind of felt like a step back. So we have, I'll go in the same order that I showed you them with the standard. So you have WotC's Astral Menagerie. You got a grumpy Boo on the front, and you got an Eldritch Abomination on the back. Light of Xaryxis, you have an Astral Elf on the front, symbol on the back, and a ship. And then Astral Adventurers Guide, you got a GIF and a couple of guns. These are fine, but I personally wouldn't shell out the money for these designs. They're very simple, and they're not super evocative. When you think of Spelljammer, that's such, like, the visuals, you can see from the DM screen, the visuals are so cool and engaging. And to just do a face on the cover feels like a missed opportunity. So that's just my review on the aesthetics of the two bundles. Unless you really like the look of these, which you might. This is all down to personal preference. I mean, having a grumpy Boo is very cute and fun. But so if you really dig these, great. If not, then yeah, I would go with just the standard. So contents of the books. So let's start with the Astral Adventurers guide, since this is the player's handbook of Spelljammer and what your players are going to want to look at, or if you are a player, what you're going to be jumping to look through. So what we have here is the character options. So you have the new races like the Astral Elf, the Auto Gnome, and you have like the GIF have already been in the game, but you have a reprinting of them here. The Plasmoids and the Thrycreen are all in the book. They do follow the Tasha's rule for fantasy races, where they don't have racial bonuses to anything. You get to just pick where it goes, which I'm personally fine with. And then each race has its own unique flavored racial feature that you get to utilize. I think that's fine for me personally. Doesn't bother me to not have racial bonuses. And then you get into Astral Adventuring. So this is a huge chunk of the book. I mean, it starts on page 16, ends on page 56, and there's only 64 pages in each of these books. So that's the other thing to keep in mind, is these are tiny books, but you get 3 of them. And a lot of this book is dedicated to the rules and mechanics of how do you fly? How do you spell jam? How do you fly a ship? How do the air pockets work? All that kind of stuff. And a lot of this is in the DM screen as well. So you have this as a reference, like the astral plane. And then you have different magic and magic items that you can utilize and things like that. And the ships. So I will say the ships in this book are very cool, and you have a lot of different ships. And what I like about it is you get the layout of the ship, you get a numbered map of the ship where everything is, you get like the armor class for the ship, all that kind of stuff, the crew requirements for the different weapons. And no, I mean, this is great. This is the highlight of the book for me, is all these different ships, because for those of you not familiar with like Eberron as a setting, Eberron has airships, and they're typically portrayed as big, kind of standard looking galleons with elemental rings around them. This opens up a whole new world when it comes to airships in Eberron, which excites me. So don't be afraid to take this stuff and just rip it for your own use and devices, because I think it's great. The living ship is so cool. The Nautiloid obviously is an iconic Spelljammer thing. The Night Spider is terrifying. But yeah, so you have a ton of ships to look through. I mean, I'm still flipping, and I'm still getting ship after ship. You got the squid ship, the star moth, so turtle ship. So a lot of ships in here, which is great. And you get all the mechanics for how to utilize them. And then the third chapter is the Rock of Brawl, which is, you know, the port in Spelljammer. Kind of reads very, you know, not quite Tortuga from Pirates of the Caribbean, because it's not quite as lawless. There is a bit more of a hierarchy to the rock, but you get a lot of like great, like the who's who, the high city, and different locations, and you have little fun nuggets of plot hooks that you can take an NPC and build off of. So yeah, and then you got a poster of the Rock of Brawl in the back of the book as well that I have not unfolded yet, but I'll do that right now. Why not? So here's the top side of the Rock of Brawl. And then on the other side of the map, you have the underside of the Rock of Brawl. So a really well-labeled map with high city, middle city, low city, all the things that you need. And it's good reference if you're going to utilize this for your game. Folding maps. I haven't had to do that in years. And just to double check and make sure, I'm going to look in the collector's edition. Don't think it's different. I looked briefly, but I want to double check that they didn't give you like a super duper special map. No, this is very clearly the same map, just looking at it. But since this is the collector's edition, I'm not going to take the map out of it just because. So that is the Astral Adventurers guide. I don't want to get too deep into the mechanics with these, because, you know, it's like, yeah, this is what the Plasmoid does, and this is what the GIF get, and that seems boring, if I'm being perfectly honest. So my favorite race, I guess I'll give you that much, is the Auto Gnome. They are super fun and super cool, and you know, the mechanical like construct player character race is fun and interesting. And once again, being an Eberron nerd that has Warforged, I see this and think, oh, like, is this something that House Cannith and Eberron was working on in secret, and they have like smaller Warforged that are called Autognomes? Who knows? But that, yeah, they were my most surprising player characteristics. Like, oh, this is interesting, because full disclosure, not super familiar with Spelljammer as a setting. This is kind of my introduction to it. So anyway, let's go on to Boo's Magical Menagerie, Astral Menagerie. Got the books right here. You think I could remember the titles? So this is the bestiary, the monster manual for Spelljammer. And boy, is there just, once again, 64 pages, but it's a dense 64 pages. You get the stat blocks by challenge rating, so you have an easy reference because they are presented, I believe, alphabetically. And so this is an easy way for you to see, okay, if I want low level enemies or low challenge rating enemies, where can I find them? The astral encounters that I mentioned that are on the DM screen, you have all of those tables here where you can roll randomly for Wild Space, Astral Sea, ship encounters, etc. And then we get into the wacky and wild, monsters of Spelljammer. This ranges from like what you would expect from D&D in space with like the astral elves to like the Artux read very Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for me, of like these sentient, intelligent plant creatures that are obsessed with waging war. And you have these different like stages of development of them, but very fun. The Astral Elves, like I said, very iconically fantasy-esque race. Autognomes as bad guys. My favorite, probably the Eyemonger, is truly terrifying, where it just looks like a regular old asteroid until it opens its eye and mouth, and then it tries to eat you. And its throat is anti-magic, so if it manages to get you in its gullet, can't use magic to get out, which, yeah, terrifying from a player standpoint. You got the Gift, the Githyanki, the Hadozese, the Jammer Leech, the Lunar Dragon and Solar Dragon. Very cool. You get the ancient version of each of them, the adult, the young, and the wormling version of each of these. The Lunar Dragons being Cold Breath and the Wing Attack and the Treacherous Ice, and then having the Lair abilities. So, I mean, the dragons are very cool in this. I think mechanically are very interesting and compelling. You have the regional effects for the layers. Continuing on, my favorite. So here's the thing. I am a fickle person when it comes to my D&D settings, because typically I like a bit more seriousness. I like the drama, not grimdark, but I like the drama and like the emotional torment that like player characters go through. And as a DM, even when I'm running them, I want the drama to be high, almost melodramatic. And so that's the type of game I actually like running. But when I'm reading a book and I see a monster called Murder Comet, it just like, it's going to be one of my favorites, because it's just so dumb. It's a comet with a big old mean face, and it's called a Murder Comet. Yeah, it's a CR5, so it's not like super dangerous for like player characters that have been going for a while, but it's called Murder Comet, which is just so funny. So I just had to point that out. You have the Plasmoid as enemies, the Sirlons, the Rhaegar are a really unique. So they kind of thread that line. They're like cephalopod beings that have evolved to appear humanoid, and they thread that needle of feeling like D&D, but still feeling very alien, like Spelljammer. And forgive me if these have been around in Spelljammer for a long time, but when I read about their culture and who they are, and you got to read about their ships in the player's handbook, the Astral handbook, sorry, then Astral Adventurers guide. God, I cannot remember the name of these books, but they're such a unique and inventive race, so I really like them. And then the Solar Dragons, great, terrifying. They show up in the adventure that we're going to get into. And then you got Space Clowns, which are, I think, a bit too silly for me. They're fiends, which is also very strange. I mean, space clowns are very silly. They'll fit into certain games. I don't know if I'll fit them into my games. The Starlight apparitions are super cool. It's like they're almost like ghosts, but they're different than ghosts because they're not like they're not holding on to like unfinished business. Like a Starlight apparition is just when somebody dies in the astral plane and like a copy of their soul is made, which is very cool and very interesting. Vampirates are also in this book, and that Space Clowns is too far, but Vampirates is right there with Murder Comet for me of like, yep, that's fun. Because also, yeah, the name Vampirate is very silly. But you could play them serious. You could play them scary, like an undead ship, like a derelict ship with vampires on it. Super cool and evocative. So Vampirates and Murder Comet are my two MVPs of Boo's Astral Menagerie. But in actuality, the Rhaegar are probably my favorite element that's been added by this book. But all of the monsters are super cool. Some of them are going to be for your game. Some of them aren't. So yeah, just take that into consideration when you're looking at it. And now Light of Xaryxis, the adventure included. I really, really liked this adventure. I will say there is a recommendation in, like, it basically turns the adventure into an episodic thing where, like, it's 4 parts with 3 chapters in each part. And the idea is you get through 1 chapter each session, which I think is a fine, ambitious idea. But the chapters aren't that big, I will say. So like chapter 1 is the party is like just in the city, whatever, like you get to, what if I wanted to set this in Eberron, I could. It's dangerous because and you have a bit of a disclaimer if you're a person that's wanting to play in Spelljammer and you're checking this out, stop here because I'm getting into spoilers of the adventure. It's good. I recommend it. I had a lot of fun reading it. It's my style of adventure, but I'm going to get into more details, so go away. Okay? Only DMs left? Cool. So, yeah, it gives you a warning that, like, hey, whatever world that you start, if it's like your homebrew campaign setting that you've lovingly created or an established setting like I have, like Eberron, that there's a chance that it's going to be destroyed in this adventure. So, yeah, maybe don't do that. Maybe go through Journeys to the Radiant Citadel and find one of the settings that you think is interesting, but maybe not like something that you're desperate to hold on to. This is for starting off with level 5 characters. So you could do like the Written in Blood, the second adventure. That video is coming next. Journeys through the Radiant Citadel and on God's Breath. And, you know, you could do that adventure and then have chapter 1 of this kick off where stuff starts falling through from the sky. Astral blights start falling from the sky. And, yeah, the players basically have to make the choice of, do they try to fight the things that are falling? Do they head to the docks? Do they hide? Do they try to get out of the city? And there's all these different things that happen based on what they do. Like if they fight, it's just an endless wave. It never stops. So it needs to become apparent very quickly of like, hey, this is not a problem that you can fight your way out of. And basically they have to get off world. Like they have to get on a spelljamming ship and take off. And these huge crystalline vines like weave their way into their world and start sucking the life force from it. And that's the inciting incident. But chapter 1 is literally like, hey, things are falling from the sky. What do you do? And once they determine what they do, that's the end of the chapter. So it seems very doable to do that in a session. But, you know, once you get further into the adventure, obviously things are going to get more and more complex. Players are going to need to make decisions. So they're going to talk about it for a long time. So I like the idea of the chapter system, but I do feel like it could either lead to frustration on the DM's part that the players aren't moving as quickly as the book wants them to, or frustration on the player's part that the DM is forcing them to hit certain points by the end of the session. And so it gets kind of railroady or just pushy. So use that as a good guideline, but don't marry yourself to it. And yeah, this adventure just serves as a really great introduction to Spelljammer as a setting, to the mechanics of Spelljammer, to the iconic monsters and races in Spelljammer. And I would equate, I was a really big fan of early day BioWare storytelling, like Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, and these games that had the players getting really invested in a story and a setting, making allies with various like non-player characters, but then they're eventually hitting a point where a decision has to be made, and it's a big decision. Like I said, the player character's world is hanging in the balance. I'm not going to get into the major spoilers because this was a lot of fun to read and I don't want to take that from anyone. But I will say that effectively the decision that the player characters have to make has two worlds hanging in the balance. Their own world and another world. And they have to make the choice of, do they sacrifice an entire other world to save their own? And that's the stakes at the end of this adventure. And it becomes pretty apparent before the very end that like we're building towards these stakes and it's going to suck, but that's the type of adventure that we're doing. But you get to interact with the Astral Elves and Vampirates and just all kinds of iconically Spelljammer stuff. And you get to fly your own ship and lead big assaults with like lots of combatants on both sides. So super fun adventure, super fun to read, super compelling. Would love to play through this adventure, although I've read it, so now I can't. So I guess I just have to run it for somebody. But these 3 books are well worth your investment, well worth the price on the box. Even if you're not planning on running in Spelljammer, because if you run in a setting with like airships, then the ships in the Astral Adventurers guide is great. All of the monsters in Boo's Astral Menagerie can be utilized in your setting, even space clowns in some capacity, maybe. But lunar dragons and solar dragons are super cool, and they can exist in your world. They're gonna exist in Eberron, like the games that I run. They're gonna be there. So they're super cool, super fun, super engaging. And then the adventure is a really well-written adventure. And even if you don't plan on running it as it's presented, there's a ton of encounters to mine from it. There's a ton of story beats to mine from it. So I would give a wholehearted recommendation for the Spelljammer box. Like I said, I would go with the standard for my personal tastes, but you've seen both now, so you can make that decision. The map, it's great in the Astral Adventurers guide. Let me know what you thought down below of this review. Are you excited for Spelljammer? Have you already picked up your copy on D&D Beyond or your friendly local game store? Let me know down below what your thoughts on it. Are you excited for it, or is Spelljammer not really your thing? Is there anything that you wish was going to be in the book that didn't quite make it? Let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Eric, and I will see you next time.